Welcome into the Spoken Bee, our NHL podcast for NESN.com. I'm your host, Rachel Holt. I'm joined by Nick Goss. Nick, this is an awesome time to be talking about the Bruins.
It is.
And other NHL teams,
yeah.
But we do focus predominantly on the Bruins because it's a team we know and love here in Boston.
Yep.
And we're very excited to talk about the state of the Bees right now, 23-10-7. We're at the halfway point of the season, so we have a pretty good indication of what this team is capable of. We didn't necessarily have that in the beginning of the season because there were so many injuries, but now in the second half of the first half of the season, they've really shown what they could do. This is what Bruce Cassidy had to say about the team. I think the first half of our year has been very good. We've seen good growth in a number of our players. We've seen our veteran guys obviously contribute, our young guys, and the guys in between. We've started to see an identity for our hockey club in the past 6 weeks. Both our goaltenders are playing very well, so very positive things throughout. Between the first quarter and the second quarter, like we mentioned, big differences with this crew. Injuries played a big part, so they had the younger guys filling in those roles.
Right.
Now the veteran guys, they're back, they're healthy, and they're showing why they are the leaders of this team. So what do you think the biggest reason for their success has been as of late?
I think it's the injuries getting healthier. I think before the season and even early on, we talked about how the Bruins, if fully healthy, have a chance to really make a deep run in the playoffs. But I think the first line has been the real key. Marchand, Pasternak, and Bergeron's been the best line in hockey, in my opinion. They've only given up one even strength goal the entire season. All three of them are in the top three on the team in points. They're bringing it every night. And I think the team is really feeding off that. So I think their top line and getting healthy have really been the catalyst so far.
And we'll talk about those guys specifically a little later on. The team as a whole, they're riding an 11-game point streak. They're 8-0-3 in the past 11 games. In the past 23 games, they're 17-3-3. Pretty awesome. They're currently in a bye week, so they're enjoying a 5-day break. Cassidy said this break is coming at a good time. We could use a break. We've got a very heavy schedule in the second half. I think we're one of the teams that's played the least amount of games, 28 teams that have played more. So we're going to need our rest to keep it up. So Cassidy may like this break, but what do you think? The team has this momentum going. They've been doing so well. So do you think this break kind of comes at a bad time for the team?
Yeah, I think you could look at it that way, certainly. You know, they're playing so well, it's 11-game point streak, but I think with all the injuries they've had, the break has come at a really good time. You don't want to overdo it. And as Cassidy said, they've played very few games. They have a very tough second half of the year. I think they have 5 games in 7 days coming up, or 8 days, something like that, including 3 against Montreal, 2 are in Montreal. So I think the rest comes at a good time. You know, they really get to recharge for this difficult schedule coming up. And, you know, there's a lot to say about momentum, but, you know, if the team is healthy and playing well, it should carry over into the second half.
You could argue that the team, they kind of fly under the radar. And maybe here in Boston, that's because we have teams like the Patriots who are playing in the playoffs. Or you have teams like the Celtics who are riding such a hot streak. They're looking good. They have the young, hot talent that everyone's excited about here in Boston. But what about the Bruins? Do you think this team is flying under the radar, not only in Boston, between the Boston teams, but also just in the NHL as a whole?
I think they are. I'm not sure. You know, first round exit last year, so I'm not sure a lot of the fans around the league thought that the Bruins were going to come in the season and really blow the doors off. And locally, you know, the Celtics have been, you know, without Hayward, you know, a lot of people thought that they wouldn't do as well as they have. They're a legit finals contender. You know, I think there was one night where the Bruins beat the Columbus Blue Jackets 7-2, and the Celtics had that great finish at the buzzer against the Indiana Pacers, and that's all anybody was really talking about. So I think they're certainly flying under the radar. And I think after the Patriots season, Bruins or Boston fans will really turn to the Bruins and say, "Wow, they've got a really good team here and a chance to make a deep run." So I think they're definitely flying under the radar, but I think that'll end pretty soon.
Okay, so let's talk about how this team is doing in the division. They're second place in the Atlantic Division. They've really climbed up as of late. They're tied with the Toronto Maple Leafs in points. Each team has 53. Now they sit behind the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Lightning, they're the clear front runner in this division. They have 65 points. In fact, they're leading the league in points. They're showing no signs of slowing down.
Yeah, no one's catching the Lightning, at least in the division. I think the Capitals have a very small chance to catch them for the best record in the East overall. But I think the Bruins have to be really happy with where they are right now. 8-0-2, as you mentioned. 8-0-2 in their last 10 games. They're tied for second with the Leafs, and they played 4 less games than the Leafs. So there's certainly, they have games in hand if they need that going forward. I think we're, barring something catastrophic, I would say that Toronto and Boston are headed for a first-round matchup. Florida is 11 points back of Toronto and Boston, and Detroit is 12. I don't see those teams making up any ground. A lot of people thought Detroit was going to have a really bad year, a rebuilding year, so that could certainly happen as well. But they're in a great spot. It's something, barring some huge injury, I would say that they're definitely going to make the playoffs.
Well, they do have a tough second half ahead, or just one that they're going to have to be all hands on deck. And you could argue that their schedule, it worked in their favor, because this is a team in the beginning, they were just trying to stay afloat when they had guys like Marchand out for extended periods of times, and they had just these holes that they needed to fill with the younger players. So I think, all things considering, they probably are happy that their schedule panned out like that, and they have played quite a bit fewer games at this point of the season than a number of other teams. Last game, they had a big game. They faced the defending Stanley Cup champion Pittsburgh Penguins. They lost 6-5 in overtime on the road. Not an easy game. They scored 4 goals in the second period in that one, so that had people pretty excited. This is a team that can come back. They can rally. They've shown that time and time again. Marchand, he had a chance with the penalty shot with a minute left in regulation. It just didn't go. So what do you think about their effort in that game? Are you happy with how they stacked up against, like I said, the defending champs?
The Penguins are struggling this season. They were outside of the playoffs at the start of that game. They're now in a playoff spot, but they're a tremendous team. Back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. They have more firepower offensively than any team in the league. They have the #1 ranked power play. The Bruins to go down, I believe it was 3 or 4-1, and come back was really impressive, and it was the second of a back-to-back. They played the night before against Carolina. So they were going into the break. They had every reason to just, all right, we have 5 days off. We can just lay off the gas, But they really kept attacking. It was pretty impressive, and to score 5 goals against the defending champs is impressive, as I said. So I thought it was a really impressive game. To get 3 or 4 points from back-to-back is good.
Offensive production, this team seems to be firing on all cylinders lately. They've scored at least 5 goals in their past 4 games. I believe the total is 22 goals during that stretch. Bergeron himself, he had 4 goals in a single game against the Hurricanes. Just a phenomenal game for him. He said the last time he did that, he was 16 years old. So it's pretty awesome to see a vet like that do so well. Bruins rank 3rd in goals against per game and 6th in goals scored per game. You like those stats. I mean, any team's going to be happy with that. In the past weeks, we talked about the younger guys, and we mentioned at the top of the show how you had guys like Charlie McAvoy filling in those scoring roles when veterans were sitting out. But this time, we really need to talk about that top line, because these are the guys that have shown why they are the top line and why they are the best on the team. Brad Marchand, he's the team's leading scorer with 40 points. He has 17 goals, 23 assists. David Pastrnak, he's right behind him with 39 points, 17 goals, 22 assists. And then Patrice Bergeron, their line mate, is 3rd with 32 points, 16 goals, and 16 assists. So as you can see, the top 3 guys, they're veteran leaders stepping up. Not veteran leaders, actually, for Pastrnak. He's a young guy, but the rest.
Yeah, I mean, the 3 of their highest paid players, 3 of their most skilled players, and that's what you need them to do. You need them to be the leaders, not only off the ice, but on the ice in terms of their production. And this line, as I said before, I think is the best in hockey. They're excellent defensively. Marchand and Bergeron are their top penalty killing unit. They all play on the power play as well, particularly Bergeron and Pastrnak. And they're on fire right now, and they need that, and that filters down to the other guys. Danton Heinen has really been impressive this year in his first full NHL season. David Krejci, coming back from injury, has really stabilized the center of the ice at both ends of the ice. And guys like Riley Nash in the 4th line are doing really well too. Ashari and Corrali chipping in offensively and taking tough defensive assignments. They're a very well-rounded team. They're one of the few teams in the NHL that's in the top 10 of goals scored, goals against, penalty killing, and power play. So they're really doing it all right now, and that's the kind of balance you want to see.
Let's talk about some guys that we need to mention in net, okay? We all like to talk about offense. We like to talk about goal scoring because it's fun, but let's not forget that Tuukka Rask is a guy standing in between the pipes, and he's really getting it done for the Bees. He's on a 13-game point streak. He did allow a season-high 6 goals in Pittsburgh.
He admitted he was bad.
He did, and he was very critical of himself. He said, "Didn't see the puck, wasn't sharp, weak goals, one of those games." However, as we mentioned, 13-game point streak for him. Do you see this as a way to kind of settle the Khudobin-Rask debate that was going on before? Who should be the starter?
I honestly thought the debate was a little ludicrous at start. I mean, Khudobin had done well, but Tuukka Rask is an elite goaltender. He has a track record of success, and I think you're really starting to see that right now. The consistency is what you want to see from him. You mentioned 13-game point streak. That's fantastic consistency. I think he's allowed two goals or fewer in about 8 or 9 of those games as well. He's giving them a chance to win. That's all you can ask for. He's one of the top 5 goalies when he's on top of his game, and that's what he's doing right now.
as far as an injury report, things are looking up for the team.
Yeah.
We're not sad about where the team is at this point.
Bit of a scary moment on Sunday.
Very scary moment. Bergeron took his shots to the knee against Pittsburgh. He was stitched up after the game, and the team is lucky that it wasn't worse because, as we mentioned, this is a guy who in the previous game had scored 4 goals and is really showing what he can do for this team. Marchand said on Bergie, I like this quote, he's a warrior. Got to give that guy a lot of credit. He'll play through anything, and I think the younger guys are seeing guys like Bergie play through injuries like this and realize how tough their team is.
We've seen this before from Bergeron in the 2013 Stanley Cup final. He played through a punctured lung and other injuries. Probably should have been in the hospital. But when guys see, when you see that from your teammate, you give it all yourself. That kind of energy and fight is contagious. And they need him. If they lost him for any significant amount of time, it could really be catastrophic for them. So to see him bounce back from that and play through it and appears like he's fine going forward, that's a big sigh of relief for Bruce Cassidy.
It's weird not to really have any injuries to report for this team because we were on a roll there where there were so many. We had to just keep on going, but team's looking really healthy right now.
Yeah, that's all you can ask for right now, and this break should help that too.
Up next, they play on Saturday when they travel to play the Montreal Canadiens. Now, this is interesting. They play the Canadiens and Claude Julien, their previous coach, 3 times in 8 games. So they're going to be seeing a lot of each other over the next month. What are you expecting out of those games?
I'm expecting desperation from the Canadiens. They only have 40 points. They're about 6-7 points out of a playoff spot right now. They're really struggling. There's a lot of people up in arms in Montreal wanting general manager Marc Bergevin to make a trade. They talked about maybe moving Max Pacioretty, one of their best players. They have to do something. A team that's constantly, it's currently constituted, is not going to make the playoffs. They have to make a move, and the Bruins, if they have a good stretch against Montreal, can really put their chances making the playoffs to bed. Not totally, but can really put a big damage in that. And as Bruins fans, I'm sure would love that. So I would see a desperate Canadiens team that has to take at least 5 or 6 points from this 3-game stretch to keep in it.
We mentioned that the Bruins kind of have a tough stretch ahead, I guess you could say. Yeah. They're playing more games than the other teams. I mean, what's going to be the goal for this month since they're coming off such a hot December where they were completely stellar?
Yeah, I think they have to keep the goaltending fresh. Khudobin has played really well this season. They haven't had that in the past. Tuukka Rask the last few years has played way too many games. It's one of the reasons they didn't make the playoffs there for a couple of years in a row. So if Khudobin can come in and keep Rask fresh, keep him fresh for the later stages of the playoff race, that'd be huge for the Bruins. They don't want to tire Rask out. So I think keeping the goaltending game spread out and having balance there will be really key and keeping them fresh at that position.
As fun as it is to talk about the Bees, let's take a look around the league and look at some other news going on in the NHL. People are going to be sad about this. It looks like Jaromir Jagr's days with the Calgary Flames are over. He did not travel with the team on the recent road trip to Minnesota. He's only scored 1 goal all season. Now, this is the guy, he's the NHL's all-time 3rd leading scorer. He has such a history in the league. People love him. He's a great guy, too. He turns 46 in December, though. So is it safe to say that his NHL playing days are over if it does turn out that his days with the Flames are over?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think this is probably it for Jaromir Jagr. As you mentioned, he's in his mid-40s. Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman reported earlier this week that the Flames and Jagr are, quote, working on an exit. He reportedly did not travel with the team on their current road trip to Minnesota. As great as Jagr is in the locker room, as much as the players respect him, he doesn't really fit in today's NHL. Fast-paced, high skill. He plays a much slower game. He's really only a power play specialist at this point. He just doesn't have the speed and the skill anymore to really play at that high level. He's one of the best players ever, but I think he could go to Europe and play, whether it's the Czech Republic or not. He could still play in the Olympics for the Czech Republic as well, but unfortunately, I'd be surprised, or I think this is the end, and I wouldn't be surprised if he catches on with another NHL team.
I did see a lot of reports of people saying, this guy's going to play forever. So if it's not in the NHL, he'll be playing in Europe. So maybe.
I can't see him retiring from the game itself anytime soon.
And I did say he's 46. He's turning 46 next month in February. So he's still a young 45. Maybe 45. There's time left. Who knows? The Las Vegas Golden Knights, they sit atop the Pacific Division with 60 points. What a wild story this team is. I mean, an expansion team, their first year in the league. No one really expects that much from them. And here they are atop the Pacific Division with 60 points. Incredible.
It really is incredible. I think the goaltending has been good. Malcolm Subban, former Bruin, and Marc-Andre Fleury have been fantastic. But I want to look at their home record, 18-2-1. I think a lot of teams come into Vegas and they're like, let's go out for, have fun at the casino, get a good meal or something, and the next day maybe they're not as into it as they should be. So that 18-2-1 home record is interesting. But it's an advantage for them. And they have plus 30 goal differential. They're 9-1-0 in their last 10 games. They're on fire.
How about a guy like William Karlsson, who has 22 goals after only scoring 18 goals in his career, and then all of a sudden he has this breakout year? I mean, just a lot of unexpected things happening in Las Vegas.
Yeah, they're getting some career years from some players, but you have to credit general manager George McPhee. He did a very nice job in the expansion draft, also in the entry draft, and in picking free agents up. He helped build the Washington Capitals into a perennial contender, and it looks like he's on his way to doing that with the Golden Knights. How
far do you see this team going? I mean, is it fun to mention Stanley Cup? I
mean, it's possible that they have a goaltender, Marc-Andre Fleury, who's won 3 of them. He's been a very, very good goalie for a while. Subban has given them a good production in the backup role. They have veterans like James Neal who have been deep in the playoffs as well. There's really no dominant team in the West. Chicago Blackhawks clearly have taken a step back from their dynasty years of late. So I think the West is completely wide open, and if they protect home ice like they're doing and they're getting good goaltending, I don't see why they can't make a deep run.
Okay, well, the Bruins, they're on a little break now, league mandated, but they have another break coming up, the NHL All-Star break. The NHL All-Star game is January 28th. So which Bruins player do you think most deserves to be in that game?
For me, it's between Bergeron and Pasternak and Marchand. I would have to go with Marchand. He's leading the team in 40 points. He was fantastic last season. He's missed I think 8 games so far, and he's still leading the team in points. I think he's having his best season he's ever had in the league, on pace for a career high in points, well over a point per game. I think he's doing tremendous defensively as well, a big part of their PK success too. I think his all-around play we should give him the nod.
Okay, well, as we mentioned, the Bruins, they next play on Saturday, so we'll keep you covered on that. And then they're back home on Monday, I believe, is their next game at 1 p.m. This is a weird start time. So that's kind of fun for people if they have Monday off. It's a holiday.
Yeah,
so,
matinee.
Yeah, so why not? Head over to the Garden and catch the Bruins. But if you can't make it there, as always, make sure you keep it on NESN.com. Thanks for tuning in to The Spoken Bee, and we'll see you next time.